The house at the end of Blackthorn Lane had been abandoned for nearly 3 decades, yet it never seemed empty. It loomed in the shadow of gnarled trees, its once grand facade now rotting and veiled in creeping ivy. The townsfolk never spoke of it unless forced to, and even then they spoke in hushed voices, their gazes darting toward its looming silhouette as if the mere mention of it would awaken something that should have been left undisturbed. They called it the widow's house. The story, passed down in whispers, told of Margaret Holloway, a reclusive widow who had lived there long after her husband disappeared under strange circumstances. Some said she had lost her mind. Others swore she was not alone in that house. One night, the house had swallowed her whole. No trace of her was ever found, only her belongings left untouched, her last meal still set on the table, rotting beneath thick layers of dust. It had become a thing of legend, a warning to the curious and reckless. Yet some curiosity is insatiable. One autumn night, a man named Daniel Grayson arrived in town, drawn by the allure of abandoned places and their histories. He was not a believer in ghosts, nor did he fear the superstitions that governed small-town minds. He saw the widow's house as nothing more than a decaying relic, something to be explored and documented, its mysteries waiting to be unraveled. With a lantern in hand and a camera slung around his neck, he crossed the threshold. The house inhaled him. The air inside was thick, almost alive, pressing against his skin like unseen fingers. The wooden floor groaned beneath his weight, and a faint, musty scent of decay clung to every corner. The furniture remained as it had for years, draped in dusty sheets, relics of a forgotten time. A single staircase spiraled upward, vanishing into darkness. He took careful steps forward, his breath shallow. Shadows twisted unnaturally in the corners of his vision. The silence was suffocating, except for the rhythmic creak of wood beneath his feet and something else. A faint rustling, like the whisper of fabric moving just out of sight. Upstairs, he found the bedroom where Margaret Holloway had slept. The bed was still made, untouched by time. A vanity stood by the window, its mirror draped in a heavy cloth. Something compelled him to remove it. His hands trembled as he pulled the fabric away. The mirror, impossibly pristine, reflected the room in perfect detail. But something was wrong. In the reflection, the door was open. He turned. It was closed. Heart pounding, he looked back at the mirror. The door in the reflection was now wide open, darkness spilling from the hallway beyond. And then he saw her. A figure moved in the reflection, emerging from the shadows. A woman in a black, tattered gown, her face obscured by a veil. She moved closer, though no footstep could be heard. He spun around, his breath catching in his throat. Nothing. But when he turned back to the mirror, she was right behind him. A scream died in his throat as cold hands gripped his shoulders, pulling him backward. The room warped around him, the walls stretching, groaning, the wood beneath his feet rotting in an instant. A rancid breath grazed his ear, and then he fell. The house swallowed him. Days passed, then weeks. The townsfolk noticed his absence but did not search. Those who entered never returned. They knew the widow's house did not like to be disturbed. The camera he had carried was later found on the porch, covered in dust as if it had been there for years. No one dared to look at the pictures inside. The house at the end of Blackthorn Lane remains, waiting, its hunger never sated. And at night, if you listen closely, you might hear the faint sound of whispers, or the creak of the floorboards beneath unseen footsteps, pacing, waiting for the next visitor to step inside.